1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens, the perfect podcast for imperfect environmentalists.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens.
The perfect podcast for imperfect environmentalists.
I'm Imogen Bhogal.
And I'm Abbie Dewhurst. And I'm in Cornwall.
Oh, it just looks absolutely glorious. You are the queen of the UK holiday. You find such gems.
I know. And this place, I'm staying at a place called 3 Mile Beach, which is quite literally on a stretch of beach that is 3 miles long, about a 20-minute drive from St Ives. Oh, it is insane. Like, I'm going to probably talk in more detail about this place in a bit, but I just thought it would be fun. You're also going to Cornwall at the end of the week. So
Yes.
in because I know that you're a fan of a fact and because I'm a really good friend, I've got some Cornwall facts for you, just to kick things off very quickly. In Cornwall, there are almost more cows than people. Cornwall is estimated to have 300,000 cattle, but only around 570,000 people. So that's roughly 1 cow for every 2 humans.
Oh my goodness. That is a great fact.
I know.
I love that.
Yeah. Where else? Over 10 million visitors a year, but only 500,000 residents. That's bonkers, isn't it?
Hang on, 10 million visitors, 500,000 residents.
Yeah.
Good grief. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, and then this is one that you can definitely use. Cornwall produces 1/3 of the UK's cauliflower.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, next time I eat a cauliflower, which is actually weirdly frequently, I will think of Cornwall.
Do think of Cornwall. Yeah, I thought you'd appreciate that. And I also drove past a huge slip and slide on my way in, and I was like, that has got Imogen's name written all over it.
Indeed, it has. And we're going to be driving to Cornwall on Friday in a VW ID Buzz, which is going to need a charging stop because we're travelling from Oxford. And I've been tasked with finding convenient stops along the way. So it could just be that slip and slide will be the perfect present for my in-laws' 60th birthday, which is why we're going away.
Well, I recommend Salmon's Leap, an Osprey hub / farm shop, which it's Strawberry Fields, but the site is Book Fastly Salmon's Leap, and it was one of a really big one that Jake did through Osprey, and he's very proud of that site, and I think it's one of their highest performing sites, and it's a beautiful site as well. So write that down.
I have, and I have circled it, and I'm going to send him a picture and say, we're here, Salmon's Leap.
Oh my God, he'll love you forever. Also, you had a birthday. How was your birthday?
I did. It was wonderful, thank you. I think this is going to be very exposing, what I'm about to say. So I am doing my yoga teacher training at the moment. So I had yoga teacher training on my birthday. Mm-hmm. So I will be having the day off on Thursday and getting my actual birthday present, which my husband has bought me a skateboarding lesson. So I'm actually kind of embarrassed about this. I just sort of said, I was like, I think I'd be quite good because I've got a low center of gravity and I quite like trying new things. And he has organised a skateboard lesson with this phenomenal guy he's called Frankie Prime. And he has set up a new skate park in Oxford, and he's been campaigning with the local council to say, when you have a skate park in an area, you have a reduced rate of youth crime. So they're like really, really good for communities.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like amazing guy, very experienced skater, I guess, and he will be teaching me how to skate. So
I need to record this so that we have the visuals, please, of you on your skateboarding lesson. Like, is that a midlife crisis or not?
I mean, possibly, but
I think no context, that's a midlife crisis. Knowing you, that's a standard birthday.
It's a standard birthday. And the other thing that I have to tell you about, I mean, this is just honestly so tragic. As you know, I am a huge fan of BBC Radio 2's Easiest Quiz on the Radio.
Yeah.
And I requested that because my birthday was on a Sunday and therefore Scott Mill's breakfast show was not on Sunday, could Deep, my husband, make me an Easiest Quiz on the Radio. And he did. And it was great.
Oh my goodness. You need to go on that quiz.
Oh, but you know what? Each time, because I forced my family to play, I obviously forced it on my birthday. And on both occasions, I got 0 points and then had to plead with the quiz to let play continue. So I don't know if I would perform necessarily that well on national radio. But
But it would be a very good. I was going to say maybe that would have been a better gift from me to you, because I do have some contacts at the Radio 2 Breakfast Show that I could have got you in on that quiz. But I actually think I might have nailed my gift to you.
I'm so annoyed I don't have it. I'm going to share. In fact, at this point in the podcast, if you're watching it, I'm going to put a picture of what Abbie got me for my birthday because it is exceptional. And for those who are listening, on screen right now is a Green Queen's mug.
But why is it even more apt? I feel like it needs some context.
It's apt for two reasons. One, me and my husband always give each other mugs with our faces on or a funny picture on for significant occasions. But more importantly than that, the queens of our logo, you swapped out the queens' heads and replaced them with our own when we were dressed as queens.
Queens. I'm sorry, but I was like, I think I have nailed Imogen's birthday present here. And I stand by it.
Absolutely sensational. And what I'm excited about is maybe creating you one, but using a different picture. And need to sort of, engineer that situation.
Watch this space for September.
But how are you? And how has your week been? What have you been up to?
I am fine, thank you. I mean, I'm very, very happy to be in Cornwall on my holidays, but in typical fashion, this has been something that's been kind of shoehorned in last minute at the point of complete exhaustion, to be honest. And so naturally, as we were driving down, I was like, yeah, a bit of a sore throat actually. And I am only a tiny bit, like I've got a bit of a cold brewing, which is really annoying because I just wanted to be able to like really make the most of this week and be really like on fine form and enjoying myself. But I think it's your body's way of saying, mate,
chill out.
Don't get off the plane from a 2-day work trip to Berlin and go straight to another shift and then straight to London and then stay in 12 hotels over 10 nights. Like, I think it's just been a bit much recently. And so I'm very pleased to be here switching off. And I think with a UK holiday, it's always been that difficulty of being like, well, I'm not abroad, so I could answer the email and like I could do this. I could, I could take that call. Whereas when you're in abroad, sometimes then you're a bit more like, oh, well, flight mode, it has to go on flight mode or don't have data or whatever. But I do actually feel very switched off, which is lovely. Might even set a little out of office.
You should.
I might.
Because I think, and I know that we've had this conversation with one of our other presenter friends, Jess Silver, if you're listening.
Yeah, hey babe.
It is very, very difficult to create those boundaries, and especially when you work a bit more flexibly. And it is so important to create that time and say, do you know what? I'm going to respond to maximum 3 emails.
Yeah.
Ideally 0, but if it reduces your stress, maximum 3, and then I am
done,
out of office. Yeah,
totally. No, totally. So I'm really happy to be here. I've never been to Cornwall, so I've got like, I write recommendations and notes and lists like you wouldn't believe. I have this humongous Cornwall recommendation list. And
my God.
Yeah, I've started to tick a few things off. I feel like what I love about this place already, and if you've been, you'll know, is that there's very few chains. Obviously, yeah, you still get your Lidl and your Asda and Costa and whatever in the odd place, but like we went into St Ives this morning. And okay, it still felt quite touristy in places, but it's all like independent shops. And we went in and we were speaking to a couple of people that own the shops. And actually they were saying that they've had a really slow start to the year in terms of like profit and footfall, which is a bit of a shame, but it's beautiful weather today. It's May half term, I think, next week. And they were like, oh, we're really hopeful that things start to pick up. So I think it just goes to show that like holidaying in places like that, we've had this conversation, and you will have heard the interview now with Juliet Kinsman, who is just wonderful and I think has reshaped the whole way that we all think about travel. But I think that there's that risk of thinking, oh, well, we're in the UK and therefore the economy isn't entirely backed up off tourism, so we don't need to support. But I think that stat about like how many visitors Cornwall has, yet this little ecosystem of the UK is 110% based off of tourists. So go spend your money, buy the holiday tat, like buy the necklace with the shells on. The shop today that I went in, the card machine wasn't working and I didn't have any cash on me, and I really wanted to buy this little flowery hair clip, so I ran out and I was like, Dad, have you got 2 quid? And my dad bought me a flowery hair clip from the shop because it's it's holiday swag, isn't it? And it means a lot to people.
Yeah. And I'm gonna I went to a cafe. It wasn't in Cornwall, it was in Dorset, but it was on the coast, and there was this beautiful, like very, very local cafe on the beach, and they had these jumpers, which I have to say were ethically sourced and all that sort of stuff, and it had a big picture of a lobster on. And I, again, didn't have any cash with me, didn't even have any of my cards, didn't have my phone, and I said to Deepa, I was like, I actually would really like that lobster jumper, please. And then felt like such a child trying on this lobster jumper and then being like, yes, this is great. This is a wonderful souvenir of this beautiful place. But yeah, you're so right. Like I think there are 20 tourists per person who lives in Cornwall.
Wild.
It is a huge part of the economy, and we can all feel very good about supporting an economy to thrive.
Well, I feel great for being here, and I will just talk a little bit about 3 Mile Beach, the place that I'm staying. That you need to check it out online. It's beach shacks. It's 2, 3, 4 bed houses. Like, if you were having a weekend away with your mates, this place cannot recommend enough. Our beach shack, if you're watching it, you can see how beautiful it is. I've kicked my parents out of the master. We're in the master, baby. But they all have little solar panels on. It's got a heat pump outside. I don't know. I've not spoke to them, so I don't know if we're completely off grid here. I don't think we are, but like clearly we're generating a lot of our own electricity just through being here, which is so fun. There's a hot tub and a sauna outside, but I guess also feeding off the solar, so that's so fun. And there's no single-use plastics. All the cleaning products, everything is all refillable. We have this gorgeous welcome hamper of like local produce. The recommendations book, I love to get somewhere and sift through a book of local recommendations, and I think that's something that's being phased out. A lot of it now is like scan the QR code. I don't want to get somewhere and sit on my phone and read through recommendations. I've done that in the run-up. I want a physical book that I can feel and touch, and it is this beautiful guidebook that they've written here and really like curated on local recommendations and places that you can walk to. So they've taken the attention to detail here is amazing, and I'm looking at my phone because as I was walking on this patio last night, as we were walking back to the lodge, they've got like these resin floors all around this amazing, it's so beachy and gorgeous. And I was like, what's that little recycle sticker on it? And it says recycle bound, #join the Red Revolution. Altco is the company, and it's used the equivalent of 180,000 straws in the making of this surface. So it just looks like a typical pebbly floor that's like resin, so it's great, perfect for when you're barefoot because they're not going to rattle around, but it's been made out of plastic straws, which I think particularly right next to the ocean is something that you feel very aware of, and like, you know, the connection to the ocean and to the plastic problem, and, you know, walking on the beach and you see plastic there, like knowing that somewhere that is so close to the ocean that is completely really basing its whole existence on being a tourism spot next to the sea is taking it so seriously, I think is absolute kudos, and hats off to 3 Mile Beach for, I think like what Juliet said, a lot of it is, okay, yeah, you can not wash your towels and you can have refillable soap, but what about actual stuff? Like, they're great baby steps and entry-level things, but particularly, I guess this place isn't very old, it's been quite newly built, and they've really like taken seriously how they've curated something and like made it, you know, seamlessly fit in with the landscape. And I love it. You're going somewhere very eco-y as well, aren't you?
Yes, it's called Loveland Farm, and it's like right on the beach. We're staying in these sort of tents. It's very off grid, you know. You actually have to bring your own towels, so you're actively making your decision of how much washing you want to do. But yeah, I will report back on all of the other bits and bobs, but I just think it's really cool that we're entering into this time where you can have these really fundamental changes. For example, how you're generating electricity, how you're experiencing that hot tub because it's been powered from solar. But it's adding to the experience, and it's not like you've had to have a really reduced sort of hair shirt experience. You're absorbed in it, and it's
I feel like for years I've just been saying, oh, it's not sexy to be sustainable. And now I'm like, oh my God, is it sexy to be sustainable now?
It is sexy to be sustainable, and maybe that's the new tagline of this podcast. Welcome to Green Queens. It's sexy to be sustainable.
Oh my God, 110% rebrand incoming.
Oh, well, so what are we talking about today? We have 2 big things that we wanted to get into. The first is sustainability in F1, and the second is some thoughts around ChatGPT and being a bit more sustainable digitally, which I've got some really interesting facts. I really did get carried away. And little spoiler alert, I did work out how much energy a human brain uses compared to ChatGPT. So more on that in a moment.
I was going to say, how did you even do that? But I'm going to assume with some energy from the brain,
Some energy from the brain, some energy from ChatGPT, ironically. And then I ended up in this cycle and I was like, But anyway, more on that in a moment. Let's kick off with sustainability in F1.
Yes. I sent you a little, so I saw Laura Winter, who is this amazing female F1 presenter. Why did I say female? She's just an F1 presenter and she's epic. I just sort of felt the need to say it, which I think is, testament to the fact that we still have a long way to go when it comes to women presenting in sports. But she posted this thing on her story, and it was her at the, I want to say Miami. What Grand Prix have we just had?
So the one which had the sustainability stuff was in Italy.
Italy, yeah, it was, yeah.
But right. I think she had recorded it from when she was in Miami. So
Miami, okay. Yeah. But she shared it to her story, and I thought it was a reel, so I was trying to click on it to get to the F1 reel, and it wasn't a reel. It was that F1 had put this thing on their story, which I thought also was quite interesting, that it didn't make the main page because a story expires after 24 hours, and they posted it on a Sunday morning. So I screen recorded it because I wanted to share it with you, essentially, but I was like, well, how else do I do this in a way that's a story? Because I'm a nerd, not a nerd, I'm like a granny, basically, and don't know how to use technology. I'm sure there is a way to share a story with someone. So anyway, screen recorded it, sent it to you, and I was like, this is really interesting. It was a big, maybe minute and a half recording that they'd done all about sustainability initiatives within Formula One, which is something that I've kind of looked at a little bit in the past. And I think naturally the conversation around sport and sustainability is one that we will be having and is a big one. But F1 is particularly interesting, isn't it? Because it is literally cars driving around a track. So I sent it to you and I was like, I feel like we can get into this on Green Queens.
Oh, and yes, we most certainly can. Because, okay, before we get into it, I want to ask a couple of questions. Are you an F1 fan? How do you engage with F1, would you say?
So my dad used to watch F1, well, still does, but my dad, when I was little, would always have it on, and it was like this thing of he would go into the snug and watch Formula One, and I would go in and watch it with him. So I remember watching it as a kid, but I didn't really fully know. I enjoyed it, and I was a bit of a tomboy. I had a Scalextric track, and always liked cars over Barbies. Well, I liked both. Who am I kidding? But so that was my kind of childhood history, and then in and out. Jake's a sports fan, so naturally through association, we've kind of talked about it, but we've never been hardcore watch every weekend. And then Drive to Survive happened, and everybody lost their minds and became a huge F1 fan again. What about you?
Well, very, very similar. I think Drive to Survive is textbook example of how you can bring storytelling to make anything exciting.
100%.
Because of the characters and because there is an element of drama, that series could have been about something really, reasonably less exciting, like Tiddlywinks, and it would have been as engaging. That is the value of. I know. I was like, I don't want to insult any sports, but I feel fairly safe with Tiddlywinks here. I mean, it's not the most visually engaging. Anyway, but that is the power of storytelling. Hats off to Netflix for that. Hats off to F1. But I think I actually have presented a series called Motorsport in the Electric Age, which was really interesting. But I think, I come at this from an interest in engineering rather than necessarily the sport. I love Drive to Survive. I love Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah. He is actually on our list of sorry, Deep, husband Deep.
Yeah.
If I met Daniel Ricciardo and he asked me out on a date, yes, I would say yes. I'm sorry.
I think even Deep would want him on his list,
Well, just a little side note on this. So I did bump into Daniel Ricciardo.
What?
Yeah. And I did tell him this. I was like, oh, sorry, sister.
You're on my list.
You're on my list. And he was like, ha, 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 well, I don't want to go breaking up any marriages. And I was like, ha, 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 ha. Oh, gosh, we're such great friends. And then bumped into him again. But this time I was stood next to my husband, Deep. And Daniel Ricciardo, I think my heart just did a little flutter, just pointed at my husband, Deep, and said, watch out, mate.
Holy moly. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was quite a moment. But, I think safe to say.
Giving me flutters.
Pardon?
That's giving me flutters. How exciting.
I've immediately got sweaty hands over here. Yeah. But yeah, I think, safe to say my interest in F1 comes from the engineering side and Drive to Survive, less into the sport. But seeing the thing that you sent me the other day, I was like, oh, I'm really, really intrigued to find out a bit more.
Because their whole thing was that they're on a mission to be net zero by 2030.
Yeah.
Which felt a bit odd to me to see that they had put that out there. What are your views?
Well, oh gosh, okay, where to start? Well, I think first off, the thing that is really exciting is that they travel around the world. There are hundreds of people within that team that travel around the world. That has a phenomenal carbon footprint.
Well, that's the largest, isn't it, of the sport looking into it. That is the bulk of the emissions that come from that sport.
Yeah, and they're starting to look at things like sustainable aviation fuels, investing in companies that are building sustainable aviation fuels, so that eventually the pollution that can come from airplanes can be slightly reduced.
Yeah.
Sustainable aviation fuels is a whole other topic that I think, there's things to be wary of there, but it's an admirable investment, I suppose, from the sport. But the other thing is that they have huge amounts of temporary infrastructure that have to be built to support the events each race weekend. And that is this exciting thing that happened in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Totally butchered how you say that. But in Italy.
Imola. Does everybody call it Imola? Is that race?
I think this is really expensive. Should I do a live Google?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm not afraid.
So the video that you sent me, they are looking at deploying, instead of having diesel generators there, that they've actually got loads of battery energy storage systems. And the advantage of that is that you can have these like container ships filled with batteries. You've trickle charged them using solar panels or renewable energy sources, and then you can use that energy throughout the weekend. That can cut the emissions from building that temporary infrastructure and running things by 90%. Definitely really, really good improvement. Yeah. Definitely an easy thing for them to pick up and replicate at races across the world.
Yeah.
But then my source of skepticism comes with the strategy for e-fuels. And this is a huge part of what they're trying to do to decarbonise. So,
e-fueling the travel or e-fueling the cars for the racing?
E-fueling the cars for the races themselves.
But I found that, interestingly, I think that is only actually 1% or less than 1% of the entire emissions that Formula One emits. So while that feels like the one that a lot of people will have something to say about, like if you're actually going to look at where to make a difference, that doesn't actually seem to be the right place to start.
I totally agree. I think, as you mentioned, the flight is a huge thing. Actually, are there ways to be savvier with having local teams, for example, as in like local, I don't mean the race drivers themselves, but like people who represent Red Bull or, McLaren or whoever.
Well, I think also the route makes no sense. Like, why, they could easily, if all of the Europe races, for example, were one after another, then we have a lot of, I think, the tennis championships, that's often the case. And therefore you do get some of the professional tennis players that will be able to get the train and like interrail around Europe for the tournaments and stuff. That makes so much more sense than like the, Singapore Grand Prix being the weekend before or 2 weeks before Imola, and then Imola, like there's 2 Italian Grand Prix and yet they're not consecutive weekends. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm so glad that you have thought about the logistics of this, because I've had the same thought. I'm like, what on earth is going on here? Surely F1 has enough influence that they could determine exactly when the races are, and that these venues would move all other things to accommodate that Grand Prix.
I mean, there's obviously so much that goes into the decisions on this, isn't it? But I would love to know, it's like they've literally just gone, oh, let's roll the dice, where next? Ooh, okay. let's go wherever, like Singapore, let's go to Monaco now, why not? Because it also doesn't even tie in with, oh, well, that's the better weather season, surely that is a very quick, easy, cheap win.
You'd really imagine, and I would love it. I bet there is someone out there who has done this, who could model the most efficient order to do the races to reduce travel time. I suppose the thing that is tricky is that actually you've got lots of people who are working on F1 who then go home to their home country in between races. And like I bumped into a former colleague who...
I definitely thought you were going to drop another F1 drive. Bumped into Max Verstappen, and told him he wasn't on the list, but that was fine.
I was like, look, Lando, walk me through your logistics. No, I bumped into a colleague who, and I won't name him and I won't name the team, but he used to work for an F1 team. He was pretty senior. And you'd go to the race you'd probably fly out to the race on Friday. You'd be working all weekend. You would fly home on Sunday evening. You'd be back in the office at 8 a.m. in the UK on Monday morning. You might have one day in lieu that week, but you're not really, because the the races continue. So
I'm like, sorry, I've got a day in lieu. The brakes can't go back in. I just, I've booked a paddleboard session. Sorry, I've booked a skateboarding lesson. Nothing I can do.
precisely, and like, but the toll that working in F1 must have on the people who work in F1, I think it is no
It
wonder
has
to
to
me
be
that
your
so many
life.
people, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Mm.
But I think you're so right. Like the really, really big source of emissions are the infrastructure that they have during a race weekend, which they're addressing with stationary energy storage. Amazing. The travel is a huge thing. And then the e-fuels thing then becomes really, really curious. So the intention is that, I think I'm just going to check my notes here, because so Formula 2 and Formula 3 championships will continue to run on 100% advanced sustainable fuel. And Formula 1 cars will start to use e-fuels in 2026. So very quick 101 on an e-fuel. It is a carbon source. So caveat number one, when you burn it, it releases carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
However, they would argue that it's carbon neutral because that carbon, they make it from carbon capture, and they drive the carbon capture process with renewable energy. And they also mix that with hydrogen, and that hydrogen is created through electrolysis by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, again using renewable energy to do that.
Right.
You now have your e-fuel. They describe it as a drop-in solution, so you can literally sub out petrol, whatever, sub in this e-fuel, and then you burn it. But my issue with this is that you're introducing loads and loads of opportunities for a very, very inefficient process. So carbon capture, so wildly inefficient.
Yeah.
Instead of using electricity directly, like renewable energy electricity directly, splitting water into hydrogen, and then combustion itself is like an only 30% efficient process as well. Meanwhile, an electric powertrain, you could just take the energy that's created. You get about 5% losses through just various inefficiencies. And then you've got a 90% efficient powertrain. So in terms of if you were just comparing energy in versus energy out, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I suppose F1 would be like, well, the value of F1 from an engineering perspective is like what they call technology transfer. So anything that's developed in F1 could make its way onto road cars. But e-fuels are only going to make their way into like super duper hypercars like Ferraris, McLarens. And so like there's a lot of effort for not much return, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also, like, I think a lot of talk within sport has to be around like its impact, and they have so much money, they have so much brain power, they have some of the best engineers in the world. How can they not see value in really investing that time, effort, money, manpower, brain power into something that is going to hugely widely benefit average Joe, average people every day? Like, I don't really see the point in, like, there's always that notion of, there was something that Jake and I were talking about when we were driving down here about some crazy technology or some crazy thing that they're putting all this money into at the moment. And again, it's that like, well, maybe we should just give everybody a working toilet first. Like, they're just, I don't see the value in doing all of this for something that is going to benefit so few people.
Well, that's it. And then I was like, well, maybe I'm having far too much of a like mainstream, what's the mainstream impact exactly, sort of as you've described there. And I'm like, because at the end of the day, it is a sport. And what is it about that sport that's entertaining? Is that visceral, noisy engine a really core part of it? Or actually, could they be more creative and use a quieter electric technology? I know Formula E exists, but I do think that's a slightly different thing. How can they still have that drama and jeopardy in the sport without having to have a really, really noisy powertrain attached to it? I don't know. Like, I don't know what the solution is, but it's just a bit like, e-fuels. If anyone sees e-fuels written down, you've got to be so wary about its actual
Is there
value.
anything, because of the, like, is there any water vapor associated as well, and then heat that comes, or emissions that come from there? Or
So no, it's just trying to create a carbon-based fuel that you can burn in the same way you burn petrol. So
right, okay.
it is making CO2. It is probably creating some kind of nitrous oxide emissions as well. But Yeah, big old, like many things. Hats off to Formula One for having that target of net zero by 2030. Couple of things just that anyone who's looking at them should be like, little bit of skepticism on certain aspects.
And I think weirdly, the fact that yes, it was put out on social media, but it was put out on their story, you know, in a like not particularly captivating way. I was interested because that is what I'm interested, and also I really rate Laura, so I like anything that she does.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was almost done in a bit like we're doing it, but like
yeah,
people, and then you know, it doesn't matter if not everybody. So if I feel like if they had something that they were super duper proud of, they would be bloody shouting it from the rooftops, because obviously they want to make it so that it's, you know, a sport that is literally sustainable, and therefore we can continue to do it and continue to watch it and consume it and whatever. But clearly there is a reluctance and a resistance there from them as well, where they're a bit like trying, but let's just maybe keep it a bit on the DL, you know.
Yeah,
which is a shame.
Total shame. And I wonder, I'm sure there are many existential questions that they have internally asking themselves that question, that a sport that relies on burning stuff, what is it, who is it, and why is it valuable in a future where that is a bit of a fur coat type thing. But
we'll keep an eye on it. Yeah.
And Laura Winter, if you are listening, which we assume you are, because why wouldn't you be? Come and tell us all about it. Be great to know.
Same goes for Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, who I know are regular fans, and really sorry that we didn't know that Imola was also the name for the Emilia Romagna Formula One.
Oh, I know. I feel really ashamed. I'm really glad that you cleared that up.
I think we got there. It's absolutely fine. So ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. This is another thing that you sent me. Do you want to explain what you sent me and why?
Yeah, I saw a post that was essentially, I think the kind of tagline was, manners don't cost anything, or do they? Because there's so much talk about how apparently, you know, ChatGPT is essentially going to end up taking over the world, and we're all going to be run by AI, and all of our jobs are going to disappear, and therefore we should probably start being a little bit politer to ChatGPT, because one day it will be so ridiculously smart that it will run us all, and if we didn't say please and thank you in those first few, write me an article on this or whatever, write me a podcast brief about this, please / thank you, then it will come back and bite us on the arse, essentially. And I see so many hilarious memes from people being like, how we talk to ChatGPT, and it's like so aggressive. It's like, write me an article on Julius Caesar, and it's like, be smarter, be more personable, be funnier, and you do literally just like bashing the instructions. Yeah. And that ChatGPT is there like, okay, no, sure, fine. But actually, with all of these please and thank yous, and that goes for emails as well, you know, like if you were to send an email to somebody, if you say, oh, can you just get this done for me, and then they do, and you go back and say, thank you so much, that's great. All of this stuff, every single time we use any form of computer or data in any way, there is a huge like energy consumption and a huge amount of water and a huge footprint that comes with that. So I sent you this link because I was like, actually, that is funny. It's kind of a talking point in the moment with regards to people saying please and thank you to AI, and how we need to be kinder to Almighty Lord, who will one day rain down on us. But what is the associated footprint with that? Is it huge, and should we actually not be doing it?
Well, before anyone is listening to this and thinking, oh my God, I despair because I'm now really reliant on ChatGPT for my job. And, you know, I certainly, full disclaimer, use ChatGPT to help with all sorts of things. I really, really treat ChatGPT as if I had a graduate on the team in my normal day job.
You treat ChatGPT like how you treat me.
But it's like, you know, anyway, but if anyone is about to despair, we have got some really handy tips of how you can use ChatGPT in a more energy efficient way. So fear not. But, you know, whenever you use any kind of digital service at all, Netflix, Instagram, whatever, email, Green Queen's podcast. God, we have a carbon footprint. Goodness me. It is using a data center. And that data center requires electricity to run, and data centers get very warm. So you need to typically you would use water to cool them. There are some really, really innovative data center cooling techniques that are being explored by various very clever people that use less water. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, they use much more, they're way more computationally intensive than like normal digital services, and because they're more computationally intensive, they are using more electricity and need more cooling. So I wanted to find some numbers to contextualize this, because this gets super interesting. So if you were to generate 100-word email using ChatGPT, that would consume about 500 milliliters of water, so about a standard bottle of water.
Okay.
Like roughly about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting metric to have in your brain, that when you send in a prompt, each time, this is just waste. And if you're listening, held up a bottle of water. And in electricity terms, that's the equivalent of powering about 14 light bulbs for an hour. So you send a request. Imagine there were 14 light bulbs around your head on for an hour. It's quite a lot of electricity. So I was like, well, obviously, often we're using ChatGPT to do tasks that we need it to do, but sometimes we're using it because we're like, kind of can't be bothered.
Yeah.
So I was like, how much energy does the human brain use to do the same task? And this is really fascinating. So the brain is like unbelievably efficient. In fact, your body generally is like a very, very well engineered system that uses energy in a tremendously efficient way. Like
if that wasn't worth watching on YouTube, I don't know what was. Yeah.
Abbie gave us a little flex there. She's been doing not high rocks. What am I trying to say? CrossFit.
Just a bit of functional fitness, babe. Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay.
Anyway, we digress. We're an incredibly efficient human being, are we?
We are so efficient. I love it. So our brains use about 20 watts of energy continuously. So again, to compare that to ChatGPT, if we assume that writing an 100-word email would take us about 2 minutes, that would be using about 0.67 watt hours of energy, which would be the equivalent to powering one light bulb for about 10 minutes. So basically, ChatGPT, to do the same task, is using about 10 times more energy than our brains.
And then some.
So I think it's an interesting comparison, and I think even stopping to say, could my brain do this and I spend 2 minutes on it, or do I want the 14 light bulbs
and also, like,
to be lit
I
for an
think
hour?
could, but also should. I think there is that risk, isn't there, of like, do we all just lose but it's a muscle memory, isn't it? You don't use it, you lose it. All of a sudden you go, shit, I actually don't know if I know how to write a 200-word email now, because it's so difficult, isn't it? Because it's there and it's so useful and it's so easy and it's so tempting. It's like, but in the same way that, there is a bottle of wine in the fridge right now. Am I drinking it? No. Could I be? Yes. Should I be? Probably, because I'm on holiday. But also, no. So it's that like could, should weigh up argument, isn't it? And there will be times where, you are completely frazzled and you just don't think you can. And then there will be other times where your to-do list is quite low and you haven't got much to do that day, and you really should put your brain to good use and write that email. And that is a really good time where you can think of the light bulb, because would you leave 14 lights on in your house for that? How long was it?
An hour.
If it was broad daylight and you didn't need them on? No way. Would you leave a 10-minute one on for 10 minutes because you forgot to flick it off in the loo? Probably.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think looking at the positives as well, I don't know how I feel about this actually. Lots of the tech companies out there, the Microsofts, the Googles, whatever of this world, because they are, managing these servers or whatever, they are having to invest very, very heavily in energy. And obviously what they're finding is that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy. And so I think it's a good way of accelerating deployment of renewable energy, but certainly the cooling question hasn't been solved, and we cannot be using that same amount of water. But, don't lose hope, because we did say that there was going to be some practical advice. So I think, first of all, being mindful.
Yeah.
Question 1. Yeah. Could you use your own brain?
If that's a no, question 2.
Question 2. Be very specific and concise with what you're asking it to do. So if you're being really like flowery and not very clear, that is going to require more processing, more energy, more water. Avoid redundancy. Obviously, like if you've got the answer, move on. You don't need to get it again. If you've got a response and you're not like totally happy with it, don't ask for a brand new response. Iterate on the one that you have there. What else is in there? So there's things like limit turns, obviously. So like end conversations when you like got to your answer. Use summarization. So actually that's an inbuilt feature. So if you've been having like great long conversation, you can use the summarization features, and that's not that intensive than generating like a, getting it to do a new task. Group related questions. I think that's a really helpful one. And actually stop and think, could just a simple Google search be sufficient? Or do I absolutely need to use it? ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever.
Do you know the difference between the two then?
So I do actually have this written down somewhere. So like a Google search, let's see. I'm not sure what the direct comparison is.
Working over time.
Pardon?
Using that light bulb, that brain of yours.
This is it. But like, a Google search is significantly lower. And then the final thing that you can do is just be specific about the length of answer that you want. So if you were like 100 words is fine, so that you're not then like using loads of energy creating like a 1,000-word email, 1,000-word essay or whatever. And actually you can choose different models. So there's ChatGPT 4, which uses quite a lot of energy, but ChatGPT 2, which could be totally sufficient for what you're asking it to do, uses less energy. So I think those are quite handy things just to like
very handy
have in mind.
And just a bit of awareness again, like it's just everything that we talk about is just be a bit more conscious, like think about everything as having an impact and then work back from there. What's worth it, what's not worth it. Did we figure out the cost of the please and thank yous then?
Let me refer to my notes. Excuse me. Okay,
please.
So this is actually quite interesting. A survey released in February by the publisher Future found that 67% of people who use AI in the US are polite to the chatbot. Nearly 20% of respondents said that they said please and thank you to AI to protect themselves in case of a possible AI uprising. The remaining 82% said they were polite simply because it was nice to be that way to anyone, AI or human. But here we go. I think it was actually, what's his face? Sam Altman, who gave some statistics on how much energy it actually uses. I'm going to put it in the notes, but basically it's an unnecessary, I define unnecessary. Each time you put that prompt in, it's using about 0.14 kilowatt hours of energy, and that's every time that you do that please or thank you. So yeah, a lot of energy.
Save it for the humans, and don't be a dick to ChatGPT, but maybe don't always be please and thank youing it, because light bulbs, energy, water, all that kind of stuff.
What I have started doing is, instead of just saying thank you, off you go, incorporating it into my next question or request. But I definitely
thank you for help the other day on that. You bloody flirt. Would just love to follow up with a possible summary for great places to visit in St Ives. Thank you.
Exactly that. And I think having in your mind, like, okay, if I'm limiting myself to 5 questions, I'm going to have to be really clear with what they are. And, we have to do that with our jobs all the time.
Yeah.
If we've got an interview that is going to last 2 minutes, we've got to make sure those questions are impactful.
And I think it kind of ties in a little bit as well to like the fast fashion, just more everything, greed, quick consumption. People now are trying to do like, what is it? What was the challenge, to buy like 5 or 10 items in the year or something like that? I think just in terms of like setting yourself manageable, realistic, statistical things that you're trying to achieve, and if you have to do that with ChatGPT in order to be a slightly more kind of consciously consuming user of AI, which is, oh my god, not a sentence that I ever thought I would hear myself say. Hey, bloody hell, 2025, look at us. But yeah, then that's never a bad thing. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to just engage brain and give everything a little bit more thought, and particularly when it comes to something that is so intensive when it comes to water.
Yeah, and I think having that visualization in your head of when you put in a search and you're tipping up water bottles, suddenly, if you're listening, I just tipped a water bottle and had a freak out that the lid wasn't on. But like, you just wouldn't do it. You just would not tip that amount of water on the floor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a useful image to have in your mind as well.
No, it definitely is. Which I think kind of rounds off quite nicely. And also the fact that I do have a date with the Atlantic Ocean and a paddleboard pending, speaking of water, because that means
very quickly then. Very, very, very quickly.
Sustainable business shout out.
Yes.
What's yours?
Well, so I saw this company this morning, totally blown away. They are called, it's a very local one. They're called Ox Bikes. You can order them online, so they deliver to anyone in the UK. They recycle and refurbish old bikes and keep them on the road, and there's lots of proceeds that go to charity. So wonderful.
And also very apt, because just before this, we did interview Hattie Park, Head of Sustainability at Wimbledon, and that interview will be on later in the year as the Wimbledon Championship ramps up. And she talked a lot about, in fact, her whole piece of advice was cycle everywhere, anywhere. Maybe not the Yorkshire Dales, she said to me, but everywhere else.
Yeah.
So that's very apt. Okay, mine is Cornwall based. I mean, I have to shout out 3 Mile Beach because, and I will also caveat this by saying I did get a little bit of PR discount, but I've had lots of PR discount in my time, very fortunately, and I have not been this impressed, particularly somewhere local. I mean, it took us 7 hours to bloody get here, but in the UK, that has taken everything so seriously from start to finish, like from opening the fridge to walking on a flooring to how how the energy is being powered by the sunshine here. Wonderful. So definitely 3 Mile Beach. But also when we were in St Ives, we walked past this gorgeous shop called Two Sisters, and these cardigans caught our eye. They were so beautiful, all really unique, embroidered with various different things. And then there was a sunglasses stand next to it. And my mum was like, look, those sunglasses are made from recycled fishing nets. There was a little sign next to it. So we went in and ended up having a beautiful conversation with, I don't think she was the owner, I think she just worked there, but you could so tell that she was so proud of this company and everything that they stood for. They were founded in 2022. There wasn't a single thing that you could purchase in that shop that hadn't had a positive impact in some way. There was jewellery made by old fishing nets as well. All the dresses were organic cotton. It came with a slightly higher price point, but honestly, these products were amazing. I feel like I might have to go back and buy myself one of the dresses because they were so beautiful. And so if you're in St Ives, if you just so happen to be in St Ives, and even if you're not, I reckon they'll have a website, Two Sisters, sunglasses made from recycled fishing nets, jewellery made from recycled fishing nets. They had leather bags as well that were made from leather that Burberry were just getting rid of. It would have got gone to landfill. So these sisters worked really hard to try and negotiate some sort of contract with them whereby they now get all of their old leather that's not good enough to be Burberry, but it 100% is good enough. It's just Burberry have such high standards. And the shop was really cute. So that is my sustainable business recommendation for today.
That is an amazing recommendation, and I am particularly grateful because I am headed to Cornwall later this week. So I will check it out.
Well, I'll wave at you.
We'll pass each other. Maybe at the charger, we'll be like, what are you doing here?
I know. Fancy seeing a fellow Green Queen. No, I'm actually getting the train, which is great. There's a direct train from Leeds all the way to Padstow. No, Penzance. And I'm getting the train up, so that's going to be fun.
That's unbelievable. What an incredible journey.
I know. Look at me. It's been so nice to chat. What a range of topics we've covered.
F1, ChatGPT, sunglasses. Who'd have thought?
Cornwall. Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to go enjoy my holiday.
Have a fabulous holiday, and I will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Green Queens. If you did and you'd like to hear more, we'd be so very grateful if you could subscribe and join the Green group chat for weekly episodes.